The New York Post obtained a redacted portion of a handwritten letter the former president sent to his then college girlfriend. I make love to men daily, but in the imagination.
Greg Gutfeld isn't holding back. In a shocking reveal, he took aim at Biden, dissecting the chaos surrounding his presidency. From economic woes to border failures, the stories paint a troubling picture. Are Americans losing faith? What really goes on behind the scenes in the Oval Office? And now, in a twist you didn't see coming, Greg Gutfeld leaked the whole secrets behind Obama. Age, doubts, and leadership. Greg Gutfeld is a well-known Fox News host who doesn't shy away from criticizing President Biden. On his show, Gutfeld, he frequently talks about Biden's policies and decisions. Before Biden announced he would not run for re-election, Gutfeld expressed concerns about his mental health. He also questioned Biden's ability to lead effectively. He claimed that both Americans and global figures had started noticing what they perceived as a decline in Biden's cognitive functions. Gutfeld also suggested that people's growing doubts about Biden's mental fitness were hurting his presidency. He pointed out that it wasn't just the public or foreign leaders expressing worries. Even some Democrats were beginning to question Biden's capacity to remain in office. On a related note, the upcoming 2024 presidential elections had age as a significant topic. Joe Biden, who holds the record as the oldest sitting president in United States history, is set to turn 82 in November 2024. Meanwhile, his rival, Donald Trump, is 78 years old. A survey carried out by the New York Times and Siena College shed light on how much Biden's age weighed on voters' minds. The findings showed that 74% of registered voters believed Biden was simply too old to be an effective president, with 43% expressing the same worry about Trump. What's even more revealing is that 62% of those who supported Biden in 2020 thought he was too old for the position. Around 59% of Democrats shared this sentiment. Despite these apprehensions, many potential Biden voters in 2024 still viewed him as the preferred option. They considered Trump's age and other factors as also concerning. Now, people who see President Joe Biden often, whether in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, or in meetings around the world, describe him in two ways. They say he can be very sharp and focused. However, they also mention that there are times, especially later in the day, when his thoughts seem disorganized. During these moments, he might trail off mid-sentence or appear confused. Sometimes, he has trouble remembering details about policies or even people's names. He might stare off into space or move slowly around the room. It's not unusual for someone his age to have occasional trouble with focus. But in recent times, these lapses became more noticeable. This was particularly true after his poor performance in a debate against Donald Trump. During that debate, Biden looked pale, gave confusing answers, stared off, and lost his train of thought. The debate on June 27, 2024, worried many Democrats and his financial supporters. They were concerned because Biden seemed much worse than usual, even in his more routine moments of being less sharp. This raised doubts about whether he could handle the tough campaign ahead or govern effectively for another term if he won. Despite these worries, the party's leaders tried to present a strong, united front in support of Biden. Biden's retreat, economic strain, and voter doubt. In July 2024, just before President Biden was set to step down, Greg Gutfeld stirred up controversy by comparing him to Adolf Hitler. Gutfeld used this comparison as part of a broader critique of Biden's performance and his prospects in the presidential race. During the broadcast, Gutfeld argued that Biden was metaphorically slow-walking his exit from the race. He suggested that Biden's current situation was like Hitler's retreat into isolation, and Biden seemed increasingly out of touch with reality and was losing support from his allies. According to Gutfeld, the president's situation showed his failure to recognize his own shortcomings. He painted a picture of Biden as having his generals, a term he used to represent Biden's political supporters and advisors, turning away from him. This analogy was used to highlight his view that Biden's leadership was falling apart and that the Democratic Party was in a serious crisis. Gutfeld didn't stop there. He accused the Democrats of keeping Biden's presidency alive through deceit and manipulation. He claimed they were propping up his position even though he was in obvious decline. Now, the Biden administration has often claimed that the United States economy is thriving and that job creation is at an all-time high. Many people point out that they seem to ignore a key fact. The COVID-19 lockdowns they supported were a big reason for many job losses in the first place. Despite these claims, inflation and rising living costs have been a real issue. Many Americans are seeing their savings and finances shrink because of this. Biden's response has been to blame private companies for rising prices and to talk about shrinkflation. This term refers to products being reduced in size or quantity, while prices stay the same or even increase, which masks the true price hike. Cereal companies and grocery stores didn't just decide to raise prices out of spite. In fact, shrinkflation often hides the deeper problem. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says prices have gone up by 18% on average since Biden took office. Both businesses and consumers have felt the impact since January 2021. The reason behind this increase is said to be tied to the massive spending by Congress and the Biden administration. They not only poured trillions into COVID-19 emergency aid, but continued spending even after that. Much of this money was reportedly wasted or stolen. The Associated Press found that fraudsters might have stolen over $280 billion in COVID-19 relief funds. In addition, another $123 billion was either wasted or misspent. Together, these losses represent about 10% of the $4.2 trillion the United States government distributed in COVID relief aid. This spending issue isn't solely Biden's fault, though he hasn't done much to stop it. Long-term bipartisan failures have weakened the United States finances. This isn't just causing current price hikes. It could threaten the financial future of Americans for generations. Now, as the November presidential election approached, many polls showed that the economy is the top issue for voters. Research also suggested that Americans had more faith in Donald Trump than Biden when it comes to handling the economy. In fact, Biden had the lowest confidence ratings for economic management of any president since George W. Bush. This decline in confidence was last seen during the Great Recession in 2008. How Biden's policies sparked a border meltdown. The border crisis is often seen as the biggest failure of the Biden administration. It's a problem that really shines a light on what some critics say is wrong with both the administration and the modern left. Experts suggest that at every level of government, the left seems to be making citizenship less significant, except when it comes to paying taxes. But the federal government has the most influence, and many think the Biden administration has been encouraging illegal immigration. They argue that once people are in the country, they're likely to stay. When Biden took office, one of his first actions was to undo the border security measures from the previous administration. Trump had strict policies, but Biden promised a humane approach. Unfortunately, this meant dismantling effective enforcement strategies. For example, Biden ended the Remain in Mexico policy, which required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their claims were processed. He also ended Title 42. This is a public health measure that had been used to control immigration. Now, it wasn't just about opening the door wider for illegal immigration. The administration is also accused of making sure that illegal immigration benefits the ruling party. For example, Biden ordered the Census Bureau to count non-citizens, a move that could help Democrat-led sanctuary states that have lost residents due to their policies. The effects of these decisions have been significant. A report said there have been about 7.2 million illegal border crossings since Biden became president. That's more than the population of 36 states. Each year under Biden has set a new record for illegal border crossings, and it looks like 2024 will be no different. The situation has gotten so bad that even some Democratic mayors and governors are starting to complain. City budgets are being stretched and adjusted to handle the new arrivals. The border crisis isn't just a humanitarian issue, it's also creating other problems. A lot of illegal drugs, like fentanyl, are being smuggled in by traffickers who take advantage of the chaos. Greg Gutfeld has pointed out that Biden's policies have made the border crisis worse, and this has led to increased chaos and illegal immigration. He believes that bringing back Trump's policies might be the solution to this ongoing issue. The growing debt crisis. Every president and Congress in recent times has struggled with the issue of the national debt, but Biden has taken it to a new level. At the start of 2023, the national debt was already over $1.031 trillion, and it appears that the administration is continuously adding to the debt with no end in sight. However, during the June 2024 debate, Biden held Trump responsible for the situation. He claimed that Trump added more to the debt than anyone before him. As the national debt continues to rise, it becomes evident that neither Biden nor Trump is likely to resolve the issue anytime soon. The massive debt is causing problems because a significant portion of the budget is now allocated for interest payments on the debt. These payments are growing at a rate more than any other aspect of the budget, and it is putting pressure on other crucial spending. Trump wants to keep the tax cuts he implemented during his presidency, and he is even considering additional tax cuts for corporations. On the other hand, Biden plans to maintain the Trump tax cuts for families earning less than $400,000 annually. At the same time, he proposed nearly $1 trillion in spending on social programs over the next 10 years. He asserted that he would fund these expenses by increasing taxes on the wealthy. Now, a significant portion of the new debt incurred by both administrations was a result of spending to address the severe economic challenges brought on by COVID-19. Economists from both conservative and liberal perspectives agree that this expenditure was essential, as it helped avert a much larger economic catastrophe. Looking ahead, whoever occupies the White House will face a tough situation regarding the debt. By early 2025, Congress will need to decide whether to raise or suspend the debt limit. This debt limit is what governs the government's borrowing capacity. On the other hand, they might risk a major economic crisis if the country defaults. Additionally, by December 2025, Congress must determine whether to extend most of Trump's tax cuts or allow them to expire. And the result of this is higher taxes for nearly everyone. The costs of weak leadership. According to reports, Joe Biden has struggled to stand up to major threats from countries like China, Iran, and Russia. Many have criticized his approach as being too weak, and adversaries seem to be taking advantage of this. For instance, Iranian-backed terrorists launched missile strikes against American service members in the Middle East. These attacks haven't just been warnings, they have caused injuries to multiple troops, creating a serious sense of threat. During these attacks, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was unavailable. That's not all. The Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, was on vacation in Puerto Rico. This raised concerns about who was in charge while these strikes were happening. On January 1st, 2024, Austin was actually hospitalized. But the Department of Defense did not immediately inform President Biden, Congress, senior Defense Department officials, or senior White House national security staff. Kathleen Hicks, who was supposed to take over in Austin's absence, wasn't even told about his hospitalization when she stepped into his role. This situation was concerning because the Secretary of Defense is the critical link between the president and the command of the armed forces. With Austin in the hospital and Hicks unaware, it remains unclear who was making key decisions during this critical time. The lack of communication and clarity left many wondering who was responsible for guiding military actions, especially at a time when American service members were under attack. But that's not all. The Biden administration faced a lot of backlash after letting a Chinese surveillance balloon drift across the whole United States for 7 days. Imagine a giant spy balloon just floating over important military sites and collecting information the entire time. It first entered United States airspace on January 28th, coming in over the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. According to reports, President Biden knew about the balloon and that it violated United States airspace. However, he waited 5 days before ordering it to be shot down. People are saying that's way too long. It wasn't just Republicans who wanted answers. They were just the loudest. They said Americans deserve to know why Biden allowed this national security threat to linger. They also questioned why the administration didn't immediately tell the public about the balloon. And more importantly, what kind of information the Chinese might have been collecting during those days. There was this sense that something wasn't right, and people were left wondering why action took so long. It didn't help that this wasn't the first time the administration's decisions were under fire. Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan back in 2021 was another huge mess. The plan was supposed to be a step toward ending a long, costly war. But instead, the Taliban quickly took control of the country, including Kabul, the capital. It felt like the clock turned back 20 years in a matter of weeks. People who had gotten used to having more rights, especially women and girls, suddenly found themselves under strict Taliban rule. The group promised to respect human rights at first, but that didn't last. They soon reimposed their harsh laws. And there were reports of public executions, amputations, and other brutal punishments. The hope for any sort of democratic future disappeared almost overnight. On top of all that, over 1,000 Americans were left behind in a chaotic evacuation that was anything but smooth. They were stuck there, at the mercy of the Taliban, for months. It wasn't just people that were left behind either. The United States abandoned about $7 billion worth of military equipment, from trucks to weapons. It was one of the most criticized aspects of the withdrawal. The pictures and videos of helicopters and other gear left behind were everywhere, and it felt like a reminder of how quickly things fell apart. Whistleblowers, special treatment, and a broken system. In September 2023, Hunter Biden made headlines for a major reason. He became the first child of a sitting United States president to be indicted on federal criminal charges. But before all that, things were already heating up. Earlier that year, in the spring, 2 IRS whistleblowers came forward with some big claims. They told Congress that the Justice Department had messed with the criminal investigation into Hunter Biden. These whistleblowers spoke up because their concerns were ignored by IRS leaders. They revealed that the Justice Department had gone off track by giving Hunter special treatment that most people wouldn't receive. According to the whistleblowers, the Justice Department had done things that were far from the norm. They had allowed the statute of limitations on some charges against Hunter Biden to expire. This meant those charges couldn't be pursued anymore. They also stopped investigators from bringing up or asking about President Biden during witness interviews. And this made it hard to connect the dots. It didn't stop there. Evidence was kept away from the investigators who were trying to do their jobs. On top of that, the team that was supposed to be digging into the case was left out of important meetings with Hunter Biden's defense lawyers. If that wasn't enough, the Justice Department went a step further. They even warned Hunter's lawyers about upcoming search warrants, giving them time to get ready. When all this information came out, it sparked a huge reaction. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan got involved, asking for more details. He wanted to know how the investigation into Hunter was being handled. He wasn't about to let it slide. Jordan put out a broad request for documents and set up an interview with United States Attorney David Weiss, the special counsel leading the investigation. Jordan wanted answers and wasn't afraid to push for them. He demanded that the Justice Department hand over any documents related to the 2 IRS whistleblowers who had raised the alarm about the investigation being mishandled. The situation raised many questions about how the case was managed and whether there was any special treatment involved. It wasn't just about Hunter anymore. It became a bigger issue about how justice was being served. Or in this case, not being served. People wanted to know why things were done differently, and why evidence and important steps were missed or ignored. It painted a picture of a system that wasn't working the way it should, and it left many feeling uneasy about what was going on behind the scenes. After all the drama, things heated up even more in December 2023. A report by House Republicans said that David Weiss didn't have the ultimate authority over the investigation as many people believed. The report claimed that political appointees in the Biden administration had a lot of control and oversight over the case. It was even said that Weiss wasn't allowed to make big decisions on his own. He had to get approval from other United States attorneys if he wanted to bring cases in districts outside of his own. On top of that, he needed the green light from the Justice Department's tax division before taking specific actions against Hunter Biden. The report also painted a troubling picture of what happened after the whistleblowers spoke up. According to this report, the Justice Department tried to cover up not just Hunter Biden's actions, but also its own mishandling of the case. The report suggested that if the two brave IRS whistleblowers hadn't come forward, the Justice Department probably wouldn't have acted on Hunter's misconduct. Instead of being open, the Justice Department worked with Hunter's lawyers to make a plea deal. The deal was so favorable to Hunter that it fell apart right in the courtroom. A federal judge rejected it, saying it was just too biased toward Hunter. When that plea deal collapsed, the Biden administration's response was to double down. Attorney General Merrick Garland quickly appointed David Weiss as special counsel. It was a move that raised even more questions. When people started asking about the case, Garland and the Justice Department refused to give clear answers. They kept saying they couldn't talk about it because there was still an ongoing investigation. That line became their shield, allowing them to avoid answering tough questions about how the case was being handled. The ongoing investigation excuse wasn't just about dodging questions. It also helped the Justice Department limit what information Congress could get. They used it to restrict the testimony of key witnesses and control which documents were handed over. This made it really hard for Congress to dig into what was actually going on with the investigation. The Justice Department's tight control over information meant that the committees trying to find the truth were left in the dark. They weren't able to do their job properly. The report from House Republicans pointed out many questionable actions. It suggested that politics were deeply involved in what should have been a simple investigation. It also showed a system where decisions weren't always about the law or justice, but seemed to have a lot to do with protecting certain people and interests. The Hunter Biden case wasn't just about one man's mistakes. It showed bigger problems within the Justice Department. The handling of the investigation made many people question if the justice system was working as it should, or if it was being used to protect those in place of power. The Obama influence. Back in 2019, Donald Trump took a jab at Joe Biden. He said Biden had run for president a few times, but never got above 1%. Trump joked that Barack Obama picked Biden off the trash heap and made him vice president. At the time, it was a sharp dig, but it stung less after Biden went on to win the Democratic nomination, defeat Trump, and become president. Still, Trump's comment kind of stuck, because when Obama chose Biden as his running mate back in 2008, it surprised a lot of people. It just seemed like an odd choice to many. Now, there has been a lot of talk that Biden is just a puppet who is used to push the Democratic Party agenda. Some people, including a good number of Democrats, believe that Obama is the one really pulling the strings. They think Biden's presidency is just like a third term for Obama, carrying on with many of the same liberal policies and ideas. From the start, it was no secret that Biden was surrounding himself with a lot of familiar faces from the Obama era. Biden's cabinet picks were often described by the media as full of Obama-era officials. When Biden was first choosing his team, 12 of his first 16 senior picks were people who had worked with Obama. Big names like Alejandro Mayorkas, Antony Blinken, Susan Rice, and Tom Vilsack were among them. Months later, reports showed that nearly 3/4 of Biden's top 100 staff members had also worked under Obama. It really felt like an Obama-era reunion, and that didn't go unnoticed. Just days after winning the 2020 election, Biden laid out his plans, and it was basically all about bringing back Obama's policies that Trump had undone. Reinstating Obama's old rules and expanding on them seemed to be the focus of Biden's administration right from the start. For example, there was the Paris Climate Agreement that Obama signed. And then there were all these other rules about independent contractors, business franchises, and even regulations on how public schools discipline students of different races. Biden also aimed to bring back Obama's approach to handling cases of students accused of inappropriate misconduct on college campuses. Even rules about federal control over certain wetlands were brought back or were in the process of being restored. Another notable thing Biden has tried to bring back is the top marginal income tax rate of 39.6%. That's the same rate Obama set in 2013. Biden included this in his budget proposal, pushing for a return to the old rate. These aren't just isolated examples. there's a whole list of Obama-era rules that Biden has already brought back, is in the process of restoring, or is fighting in court to re-implement. It's a long list, and it shows just how closely Biden's policies line up with his former boss's playbook. Barack Obama himself isn't shy about staying in the limelight. In 2020, he tweeted about how his policies had laid the groundwork for a strong United States economy. Trump quickly fired back, calling Obama's claim a con job. For many, this exchange felt like Obama was still vying for recognition. Media personality Greg Gutfeld found Obama's need to stay relevant odd, especially since Obama wasn't showing much public support for Biden at that time. Fast forward to January 2024, with the next presidential race in full swing, former First Lady Michelle Obama spoke up about her fears, expressing deep concern about the upcoming election. She said she was terrified about what could possibly happen if things didn't go their way. Gutfeld didn't let that slide. He offered his opinion on why Michelle was so worried. He claimed Michelle feared Trump's return, suggesting that her real concern was losing control, whatever that might mean. All these moments paint a picture of a complex relationship between Biden and Obama, one that's been scrutinized and speculated on by many. While some see Biden as an independent leader forging his own path, others view him as closely tied to Obama's influence. So, is Biden really just Obama's puppet, like so many people suggest? Well, that's up for debate. However, it's hard to ignore the similarities, especially when so many of Biden's moves seem to be about undoing Trump's changes and bringing back what was set up during the Obama years. Trump's conviction and the battle with Kamala Harris. In the upcoming November 2024 election, Donald Trump is set to face off against Vice President Kamala Harris. However, this time, things are different as he becomes the first former United States president to be convicted of a crime. So what exactly is going on? Essentially, it's all about whether Trump tried to mess with the results of the 2020 election that he lost to Joe Biden. Prosecutors say he pressured officials to overturn the election results and spread false claims about election fraud. They also accuse him of trying to use the January 6th Capitol riot to postpone certifying Biden's victory so he could remain in office. Trump is facing 4 charges, including conspiracy to defraud the United States and conspiracy against citizens' rights. At some point, prosecutors updated these charges due to a Supreme Court ruling that complicated matters. This ruling stated that presidents have significant protection against criminal charges for actions they take while in office. So they changed the focus of the charges to Trump's actions during his campaign instead of his time as president. Basically, they're arguing that he was acting like a regular citizen when he supposedly tried to meddle with the election. Trump has been rejecting all of these claims, insisting that he didn't do anything wrong. He is also accusing the Biden administration of being behind all these legal issues. Many people think this might be an effort to sabotage his chances of running for president again. It's a situation that has a lot of people speculating about what's really happening behind closed doors. Well, whether you view it as justice being served or a political setup, one thing is for sure. This election race is unlike any we have witnessed before, and the outcome could reshape American politics for many years to come. Thank you for watching, and see you in next video.